Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going on a deep dive into something super intriguing. The connection between Islamic creed and counseling.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
we've got this really fascinating academic paper as our guide, and it explores how we can actually weave Islamic creed into counseling practices. So get ready to discover how our faith can really play a powerful role in navigating life's challenges, those ups and downs we all face.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah. And now those Islamic teachings can be a source of, true strength and well-being.
It makes you think, how can those ancient teachings actually help us in our modern lives?
Exactly. That's what we're going to dig into.
Love it.
So the paper actually kicks off by emphasizing how important Islamic creed or Aqīdah is. Like it's the bedrock, the foundation of our entire faith.
Right. Like without a strong foundation, everything built on top is going to be wobbly.
Exactly. But I have to admit, sometimes those terms can feel a little, I don't know, abstract. Can you kind of break it down for us, make it a bit more relatable?
Sure. So Muslim scholars, they've categorized Islamic teachings into these three main disciplines, right?
Huh.
You've got your Aqīdah, which is, like we said, the Islamic creed. Then there's fiqh, that focuses on the rituals and the jurisprudence, the laws. And then there's tal, and that's all about nourishing the soul.
Okay, so like a balance, right?
Yeah. And the paper really makes a point of saying that all three are important, like vital pieces.
We all work together,
Yeah, they should guide every aspect of a Muslim's life.
like a holistic approach.
Exactly. And you know what? The authors, Keshavarzi and Haq, they actually have this brilliant analogy to illustrate this idea.
I love analogies.
So do I. It makes things so much clearer. They say, imagine that you're going on a road trip and your destination is paradise.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. So your Aqīdah is like your vehicle. So it's what's going to get you there.
Okay.
Then fiqh, that's like the rules of the road.
Makes sense. Keep us safe, on track.
Exactly. And then you've got tal.
Yeah.
And that represents like the driver's well-being.
So are we making sure the driver is, like, well-rested, focused?
Yeah. Making sure you're in the right headspace to reach that destination.
I love that.
Yeah.
It really puts it all into perspective. But I'm still a little curious. How does all of this actually connect to counseling? I mean, we've got the 6 pillars of Iman, the belief in Allah, angels, the divine books, prophets, the hereafter, and divine decree. How do those beliefs, like those core beliefs, actually give us practical guidance for, like, mental and emotional well-being?
Great question. And it's something the paper goes into in detail. It's really fascinating because each of those pillars can have such a profound impact on our inner well-being.
Yeah. Give us an example.
Sure. Like the belief in Allah, that alone gives us such a strong sense of purpose, and meaning in life.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like this constant reminder that we're not alone in those struggles, that there's this higher power guiding us, supporting us through it all.
Yeah, like a constant source of comfort.
Exactly. And then there's the belief in divine decree, quadri.
Yeah.
That one can be especially powerful when you're dealing with life's challenges because it teaches us acceptance. Whatever's beyond our control, we learn to accept it as part of Allah's plan.
So it's like instead of feeling overwhelmed by things we can't change, it encourages us to just surrender, to accept.
Precisely. It's
Yeah.
incredibly liberating, especially when things get tough.
And it reminds me of some research by Muhammad in 2012 and Hamjad Matakir in 2013. They really emphasize this idea that faith is like this amazing tool in counseling.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. They found that turning to the Quran, strengthening your relationship with Allah, rediscovering that sense of purpose through Islam, all of these had a profound impact on mental health, like a positive impact.
So faith provides a framework for understanding, like for processing our experiences and emotions.
Exactly. In a way that leads to, like, growth and healing.
Makes sense.
But what about those more specific spiritual elements within Islam? Like, how do those connect to counseling?
Well, there are a few concepts that are really key here. Okay, so for instance, we've got the concept of ruh, which refers to the soul, and then qalb, which is the heart. And these really highlight the importance of our inner world.
Oh, I see.
So it's not just about our outward actions, but also about the state of our hearts and minds.
Right, so it's a more holistic approach.
Absolutely.
Recognizing that spiritual well-being is deeply connected to our mental and emotional well-being.
Exactly. And then there's this concept of nafs. It refers to the self
Okay.
and how it can be pulled in two different directions, the positive and the negative. That's where Ekla, our intellect, comes in.
Yeah.
It helps us, make choices that are right, that align with our faith.
It's like this inner compass guiding us.
Yeah, deck.
So it's about understanding ourselves, us to the complexities of being human and using our intellect to guide us towards what's good and beneficial.
Yes, precisely. And then there's this really interesting concept of fida, which is like the innate human disposition towards good. It's that natural ability within us to recognize truth.
Like we're all born with a certain goodness,
Yeah, like an inner compass.
pointing us in the right direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this idea of fira is something that's often used in Islamic counseling to help people tap into that inherent goodness, help them realize it's there.
Sometimes we just need a little reminder.
Right. And that's where a Muslim counselor can really make a difference.
That brings us to the role of the counselor. So what makes a Muslim counselor's approach, unique?
Well, for a Muslim counselor, their work isn't just a profession, it's a form of worship.
It's ibadah.
Exactly. Their intention is to seek Allah's blessings and to help others heal.
So it's like they're driven by this higher purpose.
Yes. Service to both Allah and humanity.
That's beautiful. But how does that actually play out in practice? What are the ethical considerations, especially when you're working with people from all different backgrounds?
Well, confidentiality is, super important. A Muslim counselor, they create that safe space where people feel comfortable sharing. It doesn't matter their background. And there's this deep respect for the client's autonomy.
What do you mean by that?
So it's about offering guidance and support, definitely, but within that Islamic framework. But ultimately, it's the client's choice, how they want to incorporate those principles into their life.
It's about balance, upholding those Islamic values, but also respecting each person's individual choices.
Right. And the paper goes on to explain how Islamic creed can be woven into those different stages of counseling. Inayat, back in 2001, he proposed a 3-stage model.
Okay, tell me more.
You've got the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Okay, I'm really curious about this. How are those Islamic principles actually applied in each stage?
All right. So in that beginning stage, it's all about building a strong connection with the client, that rapport, and setting clear intentions, Naya, for the journey ahead. And of course, seeking Allah's guidance throughout the whole process.
So right from the start, it's about acknowledging that divine presence.
Exactly. And the counselor is there to guide and support, but true healing, that comes from Allah.
Right. So what about that middle stage? What happens then?
All right, things get really interesting here. The counselor actually delves into the client's understanding of Islamic creed and helps them connect with Allah.
So how do they do that?
Through things like prayer, reflection,
It's like helping them find that inner strength.
Yeah.
That comes from their faith.
Exactly. And empowering them to see their challenges as opportunities, for growth, for transformation.
I'm really liking how faith is woven into each step of the way. What about that final stage? How does it end?
The ending stage is all about encouraging reliance on Allah, tawakkul. So the client is reminded of Allah's support, his mercy. And the focus really shifts to their continuous journey of growth.
It's like equipping them, right?
Yeah.
Giving them the tools they need to face those challenges with resilience and faith.
Precisely. The counseling might be over, but their journey, it continues with Allah as their guide.
Beautiful. It sounds like this process is really designed to, help with those immediate concerns, but also to nourish their spiritual well-being.
Exactly. It's that holistic approach, recognizing that connection between our minds, bodies, and spirits.
And that leads us to a really important question. How can those Islamic teachings actually help people cope with things like anxiety, stress, the mental health challenges we see so often these days?
Oh, great question. I'm sure so many of our listeners are wondering that very same thing. Well, one thing the paper really highlights is seeking forgiveness, from Allah and remembering his mercy.
Right.
Those can be incredibly powerful tools when you're facing challenges. It also emphasizes that challenges, those are a part of life.
Yeah.
And they can often be opportunities for growth.
And so it's like reframing those challenges, seeing them not as roadblocks, but as stepping stones on our path.
Exactly.
Are there specific strategies that counselors use, based on Islamic teachings?
Absolutely. One technique is what we call cognitive reframing. The counselor helps the client, challenge those negative thoughts and replace them with more positive ones, more faith-based perspectives.
Oh, that's so important, especially these days. It's so easy to get caught up in that negativity.
You're telling me.
Self-doubt.
Right.
Are there other techniques?
Oh, yeah. The paper also discusses mindfulness practices, but adapted to an Islamic context.
What does that mean?
So instead of just focusing on the present moment, you're actually focusing on the remembrance of Allah and gratitude for his blessings.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's like connecting with the divine
Hmm.
in each moment.
Exactly. And these are just a couple examples. There's no like one-size-fits-all approach, of course.
Right.
A skilled Muslim counselor, they tailor their approach to each person.
Like personalized.
Right. Based on their individual needs.
So it's this balance, faith-based guidance and those evidence-based techniques.
Exactly.
And let's not forget the importance of family and community.
Oh, absolutely. That's something that's often overlooked, in Western models of therapy. But in Islam, those ties, those connections,
It's everything.
they're so crucial.
You really are.
The paper actually highlights how important it is to involve family members when appropriate, especially, in cultures where those bonds are really strong.
Right, where family is everything.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the role of the community,
Yeah.
providing that support, that guidance, that sense of belonging.
It's like a safety net.
Yeah.
A network of people who understand your values, your beliefs.
Exactly. And remember, seeking help, that's not a sign of weakness.
No, not at all.
It's actually a step towards healing and growth. It takes courage.
This conversation has really been eye-opening for me.
Me too.
It highlights that connection between Islamic creed and counseling.
It's profound.
It's not just about addressing those surface-level issues, but nurturing the whole person,
Right.
their mind, body, spirit, all within that framework of faith.
I totally agree. And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. We're just scratching the surface.
There's so much more to explore, so much more to learn about the ways Islamic teachings can guide us towards well-being.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It's really incredible. Before we move on, I want to touch on something I think a lot of our listeners can relate to. Those feelings of guilt and shame. How can Islamic teachings help us, navigate those emotions?
Oh, that's such an important question. First, I think it's important to understand that those feelings are natural. Guilt and shame.
They are.
We're human. We all experience them. It's often when we feel like we've done something wrong or that we've fallen short.
Right. So it's not about denying those feelings, but about understanding them.
Right. And Islamic teachings, they give us this framework for processing those feelings in a healthy way.
In a constructive way.
Exactly. Like take the concept of tawbah. Repentance.
Right.
It's a pathway, to seek forgiveness from Allah and to make things right.
It's about acknowledging those shortcomings, taking responsibility for what we've done, and turning to Allah.
Exactly. And the Quran constantly reminds us of Allah's mercy, his forgiveness.
Yeah, he's Al-Ghafur, the oft-forgiving.
Right. And Al-Rahim, the most merciful. These attributes, they offer us comfort and hope when we're struggling.
It's like having a loving parent who's always ready to forgive, no matter what.
That's beautiful. It really highlights the importance of that relationship with Allah, built on trust and surrender.
When we understand his mercy, it becomes easier to let go of those burdens.
Yeah. The guilt, the shame.
It's like those heavy weights we carry,
Right.
and we can finally release them and move forward with a lighter heart.
Exactly. And the paper emphasizes self-compassion, too.
Oh, that's so important.
It reminds us that we're human, we make mistakes.
That's part of our journey.
Right. We have the perfect example in Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was known for his gentleness, his forgiveness, his compassion.
Yeah, even towards those who had wronged him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His example teaches us that perfection, it's not the goal.
Right.
The goal is to strive, to learn from our mistakes and to keep seeking Allah's guidance and forgiveness.
It's about embracing those imperfections.
Yeah.
They're part of our human journey.
Beautifully said. And remember, if you're struggling with those feelings of guilt or shame, don't be afraid to reach out. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, family member, an imam, or even a qualified Muslim counselor.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we're not alone. There are people who can help us, who can support us on that journey
Yeah.
towards healing and well-being.
Exactly. And it's a reminder of the power of our faith. It can guide us through those tough times and lead us towards peace and tranquility.
I love that. I'm really interested in the practical applications of Islamic teachings and counseling.
Yeah.
Specifically, how those concepts can be used to address those common mental health challenges we talked about earlier, like anxiety, depression.
Okay, yeah. The paper actually delves into that as well. For instance, it highlights tawakkul, reliance on Allah.
Right, so it's about surrendering those anxieties
Yeah.
to a higher power.
Yeah, like letting go of that worry, that fear.
Trusting in Allah's plan.
Exactly. When we truly understand tawakkul, we find peace, acceptance, knowing that Allah is in control.
It's a powerful shift in perspective, from focusing on the problem to focusing on the solution, from fear to faith.
Beautifully put. And the paper also talks about Salah prayer.
Right?
It's not just a ritual, it's this beautiful form of communication.
With Allah.
Yeah, expressing gratitude, seeking guidance, finding solace in his presence.
It's like that direct line to the source of comfort and peace.
Right.
I can imagine that being so grounding, so reassuring when you're dealing with anxiety or depression.
And research has shown that prayer can actually have a positive impact.
Really?
Yeah, on mental and emotional well-being. It can help reduce stress, anxiety, even symptoms of depression.
Wow. So it's not just a matter of faith, it's backed by science.
Exactly. And speaking of integrating different approaches, the paper also mentions Islamic mindfulness practices.
Oh, I've heard a lot about mindfulness lately. What's the Islamic connection there?
Well, mindfulness is all about being present, right?
Yeah, being in the moment.
Observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment. And in an Islamic context, we can enhance that practice by focusing on dhikr.
The remembrance of Allah.
Exactly. So you're connecting with that divine presence in every moment.
Oh, that's so powerful. It's like taking mindfulness to a whole new level.
Right. Infusing it with that spiritual dimension.
Reminds us of our purpose, our connection to Allah.
Exactly. And that leads us to another really important point, addressing the spiritual dimension of mental health challenges.
So what does that mean? How do we address that?
Well, in Islamic teachings, our spiritual well-being, it's deeply connected to our mental and emotional well-being.
Right. We've talked about that.
When our connection with Allah is strong, when our hearts are filled with faith, with gratitude, it affects everything.
Like a ripple effect.
Yeah. So the counselor, they would explore the client's understanding of Islamic beliefs, practices,
Okay.
helping them strengthen that relationship with Allah, find meaning in their lives.
So it's like nurturing the soul along with the mind and body. But what about more practical strategies? Does the paper mention specific techniques?
It does. One example is using Quranic verses, prophetic narrations, those that offer comfort, guidance, hope.
Oh, wow. Like using those words of Allah and his messenger as a source of healing.
Right. It also suggests incorporating storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Islamic storytelling.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, Islamic history is full of these inspiring stories, right?
Yeah.
Prophets, companions, they faced adversity with faith, with resilience. And sharing those stories, it can be really powerful.
Oh, I see.
It teaches us those valuable lessons. Patience, perseverance, reliance on Allah.
It's like having role models from our own tradition.
Exactly. And those stories can really resonate with people, help them connect with their faith, find strength.
It's amazing how much wisdom and guidance we can find within our own tradition. This really shows how important it is to bring those teachings into mental health care.
I couldn't agree more.
And on that note, the paper also talks about culturally sensitive approaches when counseling Muslim clients.
Oh, absolutely. That's so crucial.
Every culture has its own values, its own beliefs.
Right. And the counselor needs to be aware of those differences.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so for instance, understanding the role of family in Muslim cultures and how important it can be to involve family members in therapy.
Right, especially in those collectivist cultures.
Yeah, where family ties are so strong.
And decisions are often made, together.
Exactly. And it's also important to be aware of those cultural stigmas,
Oh, yeah.
the ones surrounding mental health.
Unfortunately, those still exist in many cultures.
It's true. And the counselor should approach those with sensitivity, with compassion.
So it's about educating people, right?
Yes.
About mental health challenges.
Encouraging them to seek help.
Without fear of judgment.
Exactly. Creating a safe space where they feel comfortable sharing their struggles.
It's amazing how Islamic teachings can address these sensitive issues. It really promotes mental health awareness within our communities. This whole deep dive has been such a great reminder of how holistic Islam is.
I know, it's not just rituals and beliefs, it's a way of life.
A guide for everything.
Yeah, including our mental and emotional well-being.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It's been really eye-opening. Now, I'm really curious to hear about some real-life examples, how these teachings have been put into practice, how they've helped people.
Okay, great idea. Let's explore some case studies.
Yes, showcasing that transformative power of faith in the healing process.
Sounds good.
I think our listeners will find them really valuable.
I agree. And I think they'll also demonstrate how effective it can be to incorporate those Islamic principles into mental health care.
Okay, let's dive in. I'm excited to hear these stories, discover those amazing ways that faith can bring hope and healing.
Me too. Let's do it. Welcome back to our deep dive where, Islamic creed and counseling really meet.
Yeah, it's been fascinating.
We've been exploring those foundational principles of Aqīdah
Right.
and those practical ways to bring faith into therapy.
Yeah, it's been, like, mind-blowing.
Right. But you know what I find really inspiring?
What's that?
Islamic teachings, they don't just give us theories.
Right.
They offer real solutions.
Yeah, practical solutions
Yeah,
to those challenges we face,
exactly.
in everyday life.
And I think our listeners are ready to hear about those real life applications, how these teachings actually make a difference.
Yeah. Let's jump into those case studies.
Okay, great.
Show how powerful faith can be in, that healing process.
All right, let's start with this young woman. She was struggling with anxiety and feeling like she was never good enough.
Oh, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Right. Always comparing herself to others, and it was like really affecting her self-esteem.
Yeah. It's tough. Especially these days with social media. You're constantly bombarded with like these perfect images, perfect lives.
Oh, I know. It's so unrealistic. Anyway, in this case, the counselor, they were trained in Islamic psychology,
Okay.
and they helped this young woman really understand the concept of fida.
Oh, right. That inherent goodness we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. That purity we're born with as creations of Allah.
So it was about reminding her of her own worth.
Yes. Her value. Shifting her focus away from, those external comparisons.
So instead of looking outward, she started looking inward.
Exactly. The counselor helped her focus on, like, her strengths, her talent.
Her unique gifts.
Yeah. All the good she could bring to the world. They even looked at Quranic verses, those that emphasize self-respect, the beauty of diversity.
It's amazing how a change in perspective can be so powerful.
It really is. So as she started to embrace her fida, her anxiety, it actually lessened.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
She started feeling more confident, more self-acceptance, and she even started doing more for others, acts of service.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's like she found her purpose.
Yeah, it gave her a sense of meaning.
That's so inspiring. Do you have any other examples, where faith really helped someone transform?
I do. There was this man who was going through intense grief
Oh.
after losing his wife.
Oh, that's so difficult.
He was overwhelmed by sadness,
Yeah.
guilt, this emptiness.
Yeah, that's understandable. Loss is such a universal experience.
Yeah.
And those emotions are tough. So how did the counselor help him?
Well, they used Islamic teachings to help him understand death,
Okay.
and the afterlife. They talked about those verses in the Quran that offer comfort,
Yeah.
about Allah's mercy, the temporary nature of this world.
Right, reminding him that this life is just a journey.
Exactly, and that there's eternal bliss in paradise. The counselor also encouraged him to, do acts of charity in his wife's name,
Oh, I love
that
this.
her legacy could live on.
Yeah. And it gives him a way to channel that grief into something positive.
Right. And as he started incorporating those teachings, into his daily life, he began to heal.
It takes time.
Yeah. But he was able to remember his wife with love and gratitude and move forward.
These stories are so powerful.
I know.
They really show how faith can give us strength, help us heal, even in those really dark moments.
And they highlight how important it is to find those qualified professionals who can integrate Islamic principles into their practice.
Yeah, it's not about replacing traditional therapy, but about, blending the two.
Exactly. Bringing that faith-based guidance together with those evidence-based techniques.
As we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to emphasize that, this is just a starting point. There's so much more to discover about Islamic psychology and counseling.
Definitely. We've just scratched the surface.
And for those who want to learn more, we'll be sure to share some resources.
Yeah, in the show notes.
And remember, if you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, family member, you're a mom, or a mental health professional.
And never underestimate the power of your faith. It can guide you, heal you, empower you.
Beautifully said. May Allah grant us all peace, healing, and understanding.
Right.
And until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep growing, and keep connecting with the source of all strength and guidance.
And Jazakallah khairan for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you so much for listening.